Hi, it's Linda Winter with Martelli Notions. I want to take a closer look today at the fat quarter template. All right, so you guys know fat quarters. If you've bought fat quarters before, they sometimes come in little bundles like this, but maybe you've bought fat quarters like this. So why do we have fat quarters? Well, for me, a fat quarter, I'm more likely to use than if I buy fabric off of the bolt by the yard. If I'm not sure of a project, a fat quarter is where I'm going to go grab first from my fabric stash. So I want to show you how to cut fat quarters. Quilt shops have ways to cut fat quarters, something like this, but I want to show you how with the Martelli template, this no-slip material, that you can make your own fat quarters fast and easy, accurate, consistent. So if you're not ready to give up a yard of fabric, you're ready to go. So let's talk about fat quarters first off. When you buy fabric from a quilt shop, they're taking fabric off with a bolt. Fabric typically on a bolt is, when we look at this width, this is our cross grain, this is straight of grain. When we look at this width, in the old days, it was always 44 inches. Now it might be 42 or 44 inches. So we've got 22 inches here, which means I've got 44 inches. If I were to cut a yard of fabric, okay, I've got 36 inches by 44 inches. Depending on your fabric, it might be 42 inches, but we do have 44 inches here. So if I were to cut a half a yard of fabric, I've got 18 by the 44 inches. But if I wanted to just try out a little bit of the fabric, it makes no sense for us to cut a quarter of a yard. 18 inches is my half a yard, so 9 inches by 44 inches, that's silly. What am I going to do with it? Maybe some strips for binding. So somebody came up with the idea of taking a quarter of a yard, but instead of cutting a strip, they cut a piece of fabric that looks like this. So what we want to be able to do is take advantage of this amount of fabric for some of those smaller projects and to test out projects too. So I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to use our template and cut from our fabric a fat quarter. All right, so fat quarters, if you're taking fabric off of a bolt, probably you're not going to have a bolt of fabric, but I want to show you how we can do it. I'm going to open this up a little bit. We're going to take our template. Now the template has marks on here. I highly recommend you get one of Martelli's marking pens that we have, the metallic markers, and go color in 18 by 22 inches. Fat quarters typically are 18 inches by 22 inches. Some people do 19 by 21. Again, this width that we have here, 44 inches, will determine whether it's 22 or 21. Either of those works as a fat quarter. Sometimes they do 19, but 18 plus 18 equals 36. So out of a yard of fabric, if they've truly cut you a yard of fabric, you should be able to get 2 fat quarters. So I'm going to place this on top of here. And you notice this fabric here, there's got a little bit of a pucker here. If you need to do what I'm doing here and just kind of give that a nice finger press there, you could do that. But if you've really got a pucker and that doesn't come out, you may want to take your rotary cutter. That's your selvage. We're not going to be using that anyway. You can cut that off. And make sure if you've got any wrinkles like I have here, if they're big wrinkles, then take the time to iron. Do I do that? No, because it's a fat quarter and I'm going to be using this for those smaller projects most likely. And guess what? If you're not familiar with all the fat quarter projects, they've got fat quarter friendly books, they've got fat quarter friendly patterns, they've got everything fat quarter out there available for purchase on the internet, on your, on the website, and at any of your local shops. Okay, so I turned the template. We have this direction, 18 by 22, so I'm going to turn it this way. First thing we want to do is line up to where I've got my selvage. My selvage is here, my fold is here. I want to give myself a little bit of room here because I want to take advantage of this cut and not having to open up my fabric to cut. So I'm going to place this on. By the way, in the old days before we came up with this, and it's only been out for a couple months, this is what I used. I would have to lay out my fabric, measure 18, and place this down and cut. With this, it's simple because I've got this template. Okay, so what I've done is I've given myself a little bit of a lip right here. I'm going to be squaring that off right here because this is my fold, this is my selvage, and I don't want to have to open up that fabric to be able to cut that. So I'm going to use Martelli's rotary cutter. I'm a lefty, but remember we have the right-handed rotary cutter. You can work with the 60 millimeter, you can work with the 28 millimeter, but the 45 millimeter to me is just that go-to that you're going to grab for everything. We want to put a little bit of pressure on here. The no-slip material that's on the bottom of this, that's the same as all of our templates, all of our rulers. That's going to grab this template, grab the fabric, so when I go to cut, I get perfect cuts every time. Put a little bit of pressure down and then cut, and move your hand along and cut. I'm going to get that fabric out of the way. I want to make sure I don't have anything else in the way, and I'm going to turn the template. Why? My shoulder. This is a natural extension here. I've got a little bit of fabric. Remember, that's our selvage, so I don't care if this underneath is a hair. You know, when you get fabric off of the bolt, they don't always line up consistently. You can see that doesn't line up consistently. Am I going to take the time to get this off of the bolt and refold this? That means I've got to press it. So no, my answer is no. Now, if you're selling these and you do have customers that are very particular, you know, that may be something you want to think about. Look at your fabric to see how much it's off. 18 by 22 is the rule of thumb. I've done 2 cuts. I turn my template, and you can see that little bit of fabric that I have on the fold. So I'm going to go ahead and cut and move my hand down and cut, and then move my template. By the way, if you are a quilt shop, or you're like me and you have a lot of fabric and you want to spend a day cutting, if you're on the Martelli table, tilt your table, sit at the side and cut. Instead of cutting down, you'll be cutting up, and there's no pressure and you're not having to extend. I'm going 18 inches right now. I'm cutting, and notice what I'm doing. I'm holding, putting a little bit of pressure there. That gives me that fold right there. So when I get my fat quarters, I've got 2 perfect fat quarters. All right, what do we do with this? We want to fold. There's lots of different ways to fold your fat quarters. Basically, I'm going to be grabbing the majority of the fat quarters that I have already at home, and I'm going to see how they were folded before to make sure. You can see there's a fold here, and then we've got inside of here folds and folds. So this is where it's folded. So if you want everything to line up perfectly, again, how much of a perfectionist are you? It's totally up to you. So I could fold in half this way. Let me show you what I did. I've got basically landscape folding in half this way, or we can do portrait folding in half this way. We'll do both. That way you can see how they turn out a little bit different. Give it a good crease. I've lined up these edges. We're going to fold here. We're going to fold in half. And we're going to fold in half. Now, some people don't fold in half. They'll fold a quarter and a quarter. I'm going to the edges, and we're going to fold, and that's my first fat quarter. Let's take a look at the difference when I fold this way. So I've given a crease here. This is portrait. This was landscape. When I fold here, I'm going to fold this, and you can already see how much of a difference this is going to be. It finishes at the same shape. It's just where the fold is. We can see when we look at these two, do you see how we've got folds? We've got folds, but when I turn it the other direction, do you see how the fold here, this is the landscape, this is the portrait. You can see here. See how this now, the fold is at the top, and here the fold is in the width here. All right, so those are our fat quarters there. We have 2 different ways that you can fold. How particular are you? Totally up to you. What I want to show you though is when you don't have fabric off of a bolt, you've bought fabric by the yard, and how we're going to fold that fabric. I'm going to get this out of the way, and I'm going to grab, I have about 2.5 yards of fabric here. It's a little bit more than that, but I want to show you how we can take advantage of this wonderful template. You can see how much fabric I've got here. And again, I'm going to grab these guys here, not so much worrying about my selvage if everything is lined up. Can you see the difference there? This is not lined up at all. I'm okay with that because a fat quarter is a fat quarter is a fat quarter. They're not always going to be exactly 18 by 22. What I do want to do is take advantage of the fold that's already in here, and I'm going to pull nice and tight, looking to make sure these are lined up. Again, if you are selling these and you want to be absolutely perfect, you'd have to wash this fabric, or open this up and press out that crease to refold that. I don't want to do that. All right, so I said I have more than 2.5 yards of fabric here. So what I want to do, I could take this and cut right here, but I want to cut because Martelli's rulers, Martelli's templates, we can, when we have a straight edge, cut more than 4 layers of fabric. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8. So what I'm looking at here is I want to line all of these up. Can you see I don't have those lined up perfectly? And again, it's the way that fabric came off of the bolt. We're taking advantage of what they did, which means we get what they gave us, which isn't always exactly the same. I'm okay with that. You guys have to decide if you're not. I want to fold this back up on top of itself, and what I need to do is go more than this width. Can you see how I don't have quite enough here? So I want to keep going till I have enough for me to put that template on top of. I'm going to grab all my layers and shake these out, and let's see if we've got enough with that fold that I just made. All right, so I've got a fold here, same as what I did before. I want to give myself a little bit of a lip down here because I don't want to open up each of those and have to cut, cut, cut. So we're going to cut this off. This is where my fold is. This is my selvage. So I'm going to scoot this way. And I want to make sure that when I go to cut here, that I'm cutting that fold off, but not too much where I sacrifice in my size here. We're looking at 22 inches here. We're looking at 18 inches here. All right, this is good here. I could go a little bit further, but some of those layers inside aren't folded consistently. That came from the factory where they put this fabric on. So now I have 8 layers of fabric. When I go to cut, I want to make sure as I go to cut that I'm pushing forward. And I've cut through 8 layers. I'm going to grab my fabric when I turn. The template is grabbing. That's the beauty of the no-slip material, and I want to hold down, and I'm cutting from my shoulder. My shoulder is where I have all that power. And you notice here how much further away I am. Get that template right in front of you so when you go to cut through, you can cut through all those 8 layers. Turn that template. And again, the closer I have that template to my body, the more I can cut through consistently. We have one last side, and this is where all those folds there. If I didn't leave enough of a lip, when I go to open these up, they won't all be consistent. And again, if I don't have enough of a lip either, the rotary cutter really won't have enough fabric to cut. So you want to make sure you've left enough there. Let's open these up and see how we did. 8 fat quarters all at the same time. So we've got 1, 2, if I can get my fingers to work, 3, 4, and you can see since those all separated, I know all of these are perfect too. Make your own fat quarters. This template will let you do it. Take advantage of those fabrics that you have on the shelves. This will get you sewing. It'll get you grabbing those fabrics you might not have taken advantage of. Ugly fabrics, when you're looking at yardage, not so pretty. But when you're looking at an ugly fabric in a fat quarter, hey, I could do a project with that. So the fat quarter template you can get at martellinotions.com. Head over there now and look for this template. You're going to love it.